Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's in his office and is very thankful. I'm just thankful for this channel. I'm thankful for your support. I'm thankful for your guidance. Because you see, a lot of people have asked me to review the new album by Underscores, Wallsocket, and I finally got around to listening to it. And it's an amazing album. And it's exactly the kind of album which I never would have listened to, I never would have found, I never would have known about if it were not for this channel. But more importantly, if not for the fact that most of my viewers are about half my age, if not younger. You know, I'm 46 years old, and many of you are much, much, much younger than that. And so we have this sort of great thing happening on this channel where I try to give some of my expertise that comes about from getting a doctorate and living a life and all that stuff, and then you help me understand like what's happening. And it's just great, because it's not that I'm trying to stay young, but staying in touch with youth is just a great thing. And especially when you get to experience something like this. This album, which is a tremendous work of production, lyricism, songwriting, I would put them in that order. In particular, the production, this might be the best produced album of the entire Dig Dug year. It's just an absolutely amazingly produced album. And I'll get there, but what I want to do is I want to spend a little more time with the lyrics and with the concept of this album. And that's the thing, you know, I want to give you something. Okay, I want to return the favor. You young people are helping me to understand something with the greatness of this album and the perspective of this album, and I think that this album does a lot of really good work to reflect a lot of concerns, thoughts, beliefs of the younger generation. I'm going to share something that can only come from someone who's older. You know, so you might be thinking, you know, who am I going to compare this album by Underscores to? You know, Porter Robinson, 100 Gex, Quadica, Alice Long Yugao. Sure, I'm going to compare to some of them. One of them has asked me to keep their name out my damn mouth. I'm going to respect that. But that's not actually how I want to start things off. Instead, I want to compare things to that guy up there. Neil Young. Okay? Neil Young. We're talking a guy who is 77 years old. And I think his album from 2003, Greendale, is the best comp for this album. This is the book that was made of Greendale by Neil Young. A friend of mine, Dave, thank you, Dave, got it signed for me to Skye from Neil Young. Come on. It's hard to get cooler than that. And if you don't know about this album, it is a perfect companion piece. This is the boomer companion piece to the zoomer wallsocket. Okay? Now, of course, they're both brilliant songwriters with big fan or very dedicated fan bases. They're both from the Bay Area. I mean, Neil Young's from Canada, but he's lived in the Bay Area for decades and decades now. But what I think is interesting is the way that these albums interact narratively. And I don't think this is on purpose. I doubt that Wallsockets knows the album Greendale by Neil Young. I assume that she has had influence from Neil Young, or definitely influence from people who are influenced by Neil Young. But I doubt that she is intentionally saying, oh, I want to do this. But this is the idea. So Greendale is a fictional town in California. And what Neil Young does is he uses this small town as a way to tell stories about different characters who become sort of archetypes, who become representatives of ideas. And he ends up tackling themes of corporate consolidation, small town life, environmentalism. It's not a musical, though, okay? It's not like, my name is this, and I'm going to do that, and I want to be one of those. It's not that at all. That's generic musical. I just wrote that right now. Feel free to copy that. But that's not what it is. It's not an A, B, C plot. It's a sort of pastiche. It's an image of, it's a sort of snapshot of different people's lives. And there is a story, just like there is in Underscore's album, but it's not about the story. It's about how an individual can tell the story of a small imaginary collective to illustrate issues of society at large. Okay? That's the way that Neil Young, interestingly enough, Neil Young, when he released this, was 52 years old. And I was 26 when he released it. So I was half as old as him. I am twice as old as Underscores. She is 23 and I'm 46. That doesn't mean anything. I don't believe in numerology, but it's a coincidence that I mentioned anyways. But I want to repeat this central concept. An individual telling the story of an imagined small collective, in this case, a small town, to illustrate issues of society at large. Now, this album, by the way, is one of Neil Young's best albums. I did not like it the first 30 times I listened to it. I thought it was boring, and then I listened to it more and more and more and more. If you want to get into Neil Young, I suggest this album. It has none of his greatest hits. Most Neil Young fans who go to Neil Young concerts don't know this album, but it's his brilliance and his ability to just make this music that is both sort of lazy, but also amazingly intricate and hard-worked at the same time. It's a great example. And you will be the coolest hipster if the only thing you know about Neil Young is Greendale. that's a real flex of a move, you know. I'm going to put that up there over Neil. But what is this album about? What is Wallsocket about? Well, it's about Wallsocket, Michigan. Like Greendale, it's an imaginary town. And the themes here, though, are much more interesting, I think, and much more relevant to today's life. We're still talking about corporate corruption and greed, the wealth gap, but we're also talking about sexual abuse. We're talking about familial dissolution. We're talking about asymmetrical relationships. And we're talking about body dysmorphia, but more importantly, I would say less about body dysmorphia and more about trans awakening, okay? I'm trying to figure out the best word. Please tell me in the comments, because I'm sure there's a better word. What is the word for when someone understands that they are trans? Right? Because it's like there has to be a term for that. I just don't know what it is. And I thought instead of looking it up, I would ask you, because you probably know better than the internet. So that's one of the themes. The larger theme, though, is good luck. It's this term that comes about over and over and over again, and she uses this term constantly. It's actually a sample. I'll get into where the sample comes from later. But it's this term, good luck, and what she does so well is she repeats this term so much that she forces you to think about what does good luck mean. First of all, it's the best restaurant in Rochester, New York. If you ever come to Rochester, New York, try to get a reservation. They have these burgers that are like, they're probably the best burgers I've ever eaten. But when someone says good luck, can you be lucky? Can you get lucky? Can you do luck? The whole point of luck is that it is arbitrary, right? There is no fairness in the universe, and there is no ability to be or not be lucky. You cannot be lucky. It is impossible to become lucky, okay? I mean, you can be lucky, but to wish luck on somebody is almost obscene. And the fact that she repeats this term over and over again, good luck, forces you to realize what a terrible thing that is to say to somebody. You might as well say, be lucky, like you have any kind of control over it. It is the injustice of luck that is in question here. It is the sort of weapon, it's a weapon in this album. When someone says good luck, it's saying, first of all, you're on your own, and second of all, have things work out for you. If we could scale back and look at the macro issues that are at play in this album and most albums that are released now, we're talking about inequality, the wealth gap. We're talking about the haves and the have-nots. And so to say good luck, it's almost the late-stage American hyper-capitalist belief system, you know? Good luck. You're on your own. Good luck. That's also tied into the cover of the album, which is this sort of imagined town image of a horseshoe. First of all, why is this town called Wallsocket, not Horseshoe? I don't know. I imagine it has something to do with sexual connotations that are often used in electronics, with like a male part and a female part, and a wall socket is a female part. I assume that's the rough idea, but I don't know. If you know, please tell me in the comments. But also, it's a sign of luck. Just be lucky, okay? Oh, what's that? You can't afford health insurance? Be lucky. Oh, what's that? Your right to exist is being questioned by very powerful forces around you at all times? Be lucky, okay? And the other idea is, I guess it's talking about the horseshoe theory. And the horseshoe theory, if you don't know, is it's political garbage. Where someone came up with the idea that the extremes of any ideology are equally bad. So the extreme left is equally bad as the extreme right. There's a lot of ways to debunk this theory. I'm not going to debunk it the best way possible. The main way is that, like, maybe it's true. If you're murderous, it doesn't matter if you're murderous for good or murderous for bad. You're still a murderer, and we should treat you equally. The problem is when you step back 1 or 2 steps from the furthest extremes on the horseshoe, the differences are huge. So it's way better to have somebody who believes in people's fundamental right to exist. If that is your extreme belief, if you extremely believe in equality and people's right to exist, that's very different than if you extremely believe that people should be exterminated and should not exist. But anyways, I don't know if the horseshoe theory is actually part of this album. I can't quite fit it in, except to say that seems to be sort of wrestling with a kind of mediocrity throughout this entire album. It's a sort of middle of the country, sort of middle class values. So maybe it's talking about the middle. I don't know. Again, please feel free to tell me in the comments. If you like this video, please subscribe. If you leave the letters AVAA, that stands for awesome video, as always, I will guarantee give you a heart. That's a little thing I do to help this parasocial relationship work better. We'll talk about parasocial relationships soon. I do sell a mug. I'm at my office. I don't have my mug. This is a mug for a hotel that doesn't exist anymore. So you can stay there if you like. When she describes it, she describes writing this album as coming from, quote, "I emerged from an obsessive episode adopting this mentality that everything is beautiful. Wallsocket is about realizing that most things are, but not everything is." That is beautiful, right? I mean, this, again, she's 23 years old, which pisses me off, right? Doesn't it piss you off when young? Okay, you don't know it because you're probably young if you're watching this. The older you get, you just really appreciate young, brilliant people, but you also just get pissed off because you're like, damn it, that's such a great way to put it. Because really, with wisdom comes the understanding that the existence is beautiful. Like you just do. You see the trees change color all of a sudden. That's beautiful. Or the smell of rain, or good food, people that you love. Like you end up developing this kind of appreciation. But what I love is not everything is, most things are. So maybe not falling all the way into sort of middle of the road, everything is great, Pollyannism. What she says is Wallsocket is about navigating adulthood as an American and reckoning with one's circumstance. So what's important is she is really putting the perspective in these different characters and what they represent. The light in the hallway went off. So I guess there's nobody here except for me, which means I can sing more of my generic musical. I used to dream. Okay, so that's an important aspect of this album, is the multiple perspectives. She will go between I, you, she, he. Like when she is singing, she will talk from other people's perspectives all over the place and not really make concrete distinctions. There's a beautiful, okay, I'll call it postmodern Glaven aspect to this album, where it doesn't really matter how much you follow along. It doesn't really matter how clearly you understand the things. She's giving you narrative. She's giving you lore, but she's not giving you answers. So you're going to just sit there being like, well, this person is the... I don't know. It is worth discussing this idea of is there such a thing as trans music? Whoa, left field. Potentially getting into controversial territory here. Let me first of all say, the trans community is not a monolith, okay? So in the same way, there's no such thing as white music or black music or male music or female music or non-binary music. There's no such thing as trans music, right? Trans people can make any kind of music that they like. But it does seem to me that it is potentially possible to outline a series of traits that appear that appear more often in music made by trans artists. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not saying this is a monolith. I'm not saying everybody. I'm saying, and mind you, I don't even actually particularly like addressing people's biographies. I mean, the first time I reviewed Kim Petras, I did not know that she was trans. Like, it was reviewed the whole thing, and then at the very end, I was like, oh, there you go, right? So, like, it's not. I'm not trying to be deterministic here, but it is clear that there are certain themes that pop up. Obviously around identity, quite often around gender fluidity, a very understandable fixation on the body, and especially things that veer on body horror. And I know because I'm squeamish as hell, okay? Like I drawing blood, I cannot handle it, okay? I feel for people who need to have surgical intervention in order to exist, okay? I feel great empathy. At the same time, that I believe permeates this music sometimes. So, I don't know. I'm not the person to make this determination, you know? I'm just throwing out this theory that there might be certain traits. Musically, it does seem as though hyperpop helps to facilitate this expression. I don't know exactly what it is about this style of music that might help to communicate elements of that identity. Again, I am the most cis, the most white, the most straight. Well, I'm not the most straight, but I'm pretty straight. The most male guy that you can be, right? So I'm not pretending to have any emphasis here. What I'm saying is that it seems that hyperpop, with its sort of fractured nature, with its very of-the-moment nature, I want to remind you that when I was growing up, trans rights was not an issue to most people because we did not know that trans people existed, okay? I did not know they existed. I did not know. That's not a question of good and bad and saying, well, these people shouldn't be there. I just didn't know they existed. Did they exist? Of course. Of course. They've existed in the same proportions throughout all of humanity, but I didn't know they existed, you know? So there is something about the sound of now potentially becoming the sound of that struggle for acceptance against bigotry, against extermination, as is wanted by 51% of our country, okay? Anyways, these are some more theories to talk about. You know, tell me in the comments, especially if you disagree with me, okay? Like, I am totally cool with you calling me all sorts of names and words and all that stuff, because I do not, even though I want to be an expert on Neil Young, I definitely don't want you to think that I think I'm an expert on other people's lived experience. So all that said, let's talk about the production of the album. What the hell? What the hell? This album is so well produced. It's easy to compare her to 100 gecs because I guess they toured together, and I imagine that the Venn diagram of gecs fans and underscores is basically a circle. But she does things that the gecs don't do as well. Her integration of rock instrumentation and hyperpop elements, aesthetics, rhythms, sounds is unreal. It's seamless. It's like she's making a costume, and it's integrating like peacock feathers and LED lights and just the finest silk, and yet somehow it all comes together. Part of it is that I just think that she must just be a great musician, because the way that she plays bass, the way that she plays guitar, the way that it seems to play or at least program drums just shows a level of taste, a level of creativity that is just bizarre. It is so good. Matched with that is she has the ability to make loops, which I don't think are rivaled. She has several loops on this album where I'm not a producer, right? I'm not a music producer. I mean, I have produced music in the past, I've written music and all that. But if I were like a hyperpop producer, I heard this album, I'd be like, oh, I gotta go back. I gotta work harder. I gotta work harder. I gotta work harder. Did you hear that thing? The thing with the Dance Dance Revolution? How does she do it? Okay? She is so good at producing these loops. She's so good, especially like manipulating drum sounds. And the vocal production, where she's able to use herself and double up on her own voice and bring in guest singers. It's just amazing. An instrumentation chooser, selector, I'll go chooser because it sounds sillier, and I like sounding silly. Glavin. She's one of the best instrumentation choosers, one of the best sound choosers, like just the ability to find sounds that are familiar or unfamiliar and insert those into the songs. Seriously, like this is frankly, this has to be an album of the year contender. And I wasn't going to review it. I just wasn't. I remember that album from a couple years ago. I remember thinking it looked cool, but not liking it. I'm now realizing I'm probably wrong. It's an album that is filled with memorable lines and moments, in addition to good luck, arms, body, legs, and and of course, Whoops Johnny, which I'll get to soon. If I had one criticism of the entire album, it's that it's got a stronger beginning than ending. The first half is stronger than the second half. But I'm now going to contradict myself and say that I'm wrong. So I think it's actually that there are two separate ideas of an album, that the first half is really front-loaded with a lot of this extreme production techniques, and then the back half is much more traditional songwriting, singer-songwriting, guitars, bass, singing. It seems like it might actually be an intentional decision on the album's part. So I prefer the first half, but I don't think that's a weakness of the album. Okay? So let's get to the album. I'm not going to give you the stamp yet because it's a theme album. It's a concept album. Much like Greendale, it's a concept album. It's hard to pick out one song. What I find interesting is that this is an album which is basically just about three girls. Right? It's an album about three girls. That's what it's about. There's other characters, but it's about three girls. But it starts off with cops and robbers. And again, I listened to the whole album all the way through. And I didn't... When I listened to it the first time through, I just heard them as all discrete songs. And I thought it was a really interesting, neat album. So I didn't know the narrative. I didn't try to follow the narrative. It seemed like there were maybe some things that connected from one song to another. But it's sort of a special thing to do. To just be able to listen to the album as an album and have it work. And then listen to the album as a concept album and have it work better. So Cops and Robbers is a fascinating opening because it's sort of less interesting than a lot of the... I mean, there's cool sounds. Like, I like the full band, like all these cool computer sounds and high energy. And then we have this theme of this bank teller who robs customers, I guess maybe dead customers, basically a scammer. And this is perfect because the question, and it's just... Again, she has so many catchy lines. When was the last time you saw a ski mask and a gun? When last time a ski mask and a gun? So yesterday I was making scrambled eggs for my family, and I had my baby, and she was sitting in her baby chair. And oh my! I put this on the Bluetooth on my hi-fi, and I cranked it up, and I was dancing. I kicked off my slippers, and I was dancing. She was laughing. It is an absolute, what the kids call today, a bop, and it just, it is, it's just great. And then there's this like cool bit halfway through, it gets a cappella, and then like a super hard rock bit, and then this kind of like cool farting keyboards, all these great rhythms. It is difficult to describe. It's a difficult song to describe. It's about how to rob, but most importantly, it's about white collar crime, right? Because what is America if not a country with a massive white collar crime wave and blue collar crime punishment? So if you steal enough money, you're safe. If you don't steal enough money, you're going to spend time in jail. Okay, that sort of inequality right up front, that's what's being described here with this character. But then we get to the stamp, the example song. Click above the academic gown back there, which I wear at convocation. There's no way to look cool in an academic gown. There just isn't. To the song Locals, parentheses, Girls Like Us, featuring Gabby Start. So in the narrative, we have this original sort of sin, the event that starts everything, which is this bank robbery. And then we have the introduction of these three characters. I'm going to do my best to describe these three characters. One of them is called S, asterisk, and NY. I do not know why there's the asterisk there. I presume it is because that is a dead name. That's what I presume. So that to say it is like to say a swear. So I assume that it's like maybe an O in there, implying the son of somebody. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call her Cinny, because that's not a name. So I'm going to use the term Cinny, because Cinny is not a name, neither female nor male, because there's an intentional ambiguity with what that name is supposed to be. So Cinny is trans, is sexually abused, is constantly questioning religion, and it's her dad who's the criminal. We have the character of Mara, who is the least maybe interesting character because she is obsessed with Cindy. That's her primary defining characteristic. And at a certain point, she has long arms. Weird. And then finally, Old Money B-Word, who is primarily defined by her sort of insouciance or lack of care, her apathy, and a sort of suicidal nature. You'll notice that Cindy is much more developed than the other two characters. I think that's because Cindy is the stand-in for underscores. I don't even know underscores' real name, so I'll just keep saying underscores. I know there's 3 names. Is it Alice? Doesn't matter. You can tell me in the comments if you want. I'll just keep calling her underscores. And what is so great about this is what I'm talking about, like the production on here. So she appears to be kind of taking from the song Technologic by Daft Punk, print it, fax it, change it, copy it, and upload it, throw it, hold it, go it. You know the song Technologic by Daft Punk. If not, I sound like a jackass. But what's great is she just gives out this poetry, just these words. And what she does is she's painting a landscape, right? Why is the lighting so weird on my videos these days? I just don't know what to do with myself. Am I like burning out your corneas? Can you tell me in the comments how I can stop this from happening? I can't figure it out. I feel like I look weird. So tell me in the comments. You look weird. But then tell me why you said that, because I'll forget and I'll just feel bad. So it's this whole imagery, using words to paint a landscape of the world that these 3 girls live in. Machinery, catharsis, technology. Ragtag, transcendent, slapstick. Try-hard, high-strung, neurotic. Blue-crossed, golden arches, pearly gates. Supermarket, interstate, picket fence. Domestic, citizen's arrest, vestibule. True story, gas station, phantom pain. Art therapist, eggshell white, office park. Parking garage, small detail. Micropolitan, turnpike. Private property, killing point, agenda. Arms, body, legs, flesh, skin, bone, sinew. Good luck! So I could spend another half an hour just breaking down what each of these things mean. Roughly, it is painting a world that is obsessed with private property, with the accumulation of capital, of a sort of bland Midwestern homogeneity, of golden arches and supermarkets and interstates, and sort of flattening the image of a sort of petty, private property obsessed, capital obsessed banality that is dominated by technology and corporate greed. Hey Neil, are you listening to this album? God, Neil, if you were really on it, you would work with underscores. I think that'd be awesome. Hey, he might do it. Neil's that cool of a guy. What's great is it then settles into these last words: arms, body, legs, flesh, skin, bone, sinew. Now, this feels to me like going back to that sort of trans issue that we were talking about before, trans music. The emphasis on body parts appears to me to be representing this, especially when you get into like skin, bone, sinew. We're getting into the anatomical details, and that's like the thing is when you're not trans, you don't think about anatomy very much. Right? I mean, I don't think about anatomy hardly at all. I don't think about the shape of my body or the shape of my face or how it reflects how I feel on the inside, So these are concerns here. And it goes into just this repeated line, and she just has this whole loop going. And it's just such a badass loop. It's funny. It's cool. And every song is about this every verse is about this questionnaire, and it's all about how Mara is obsessed with Cindy and how Cindy doesn't care, sort of starting to see what these people are like. And then out of absolute nowhere, a house singer. Come out and touch me! It just comes out of nowhere. Absolute nowhere. See, if that light were on, I wouldn't have done that, because I'd be afraid that my colleagues were next door. But they're not next door, so there you go. It's just awesome. It indicates a break in the song. It has, house music and you can watch my review of Renaissance by Beyonce. House music is very important, both in terms of its role in queer society and also the way that it helps to make mainstream society more queer friendly. And there's something about the way that just "come out and touch me" like invades this song. Like there's just sort of like all these things, golden arches, blue crosses, then "come out and touch me." It's awesome. This album is so well produced. And then we get to a full emo pop punk chorus. Stop me if you heard this one before. Girls like us are rotten to the core. It's great. It's about this sense of how girls are put down all the time in society, how they're shamed for how they feel, how girls who are assigned female at birth are shamed for their bodies, shamed for their desires. Girls who are assigned male at birth are shamed for existing, just all these kinds of things all mixed up together to the point where it becomes a girl power anthem, but everything's just a little bit askew. And there's this great solo. She does this thing where there's a couple settings on keyboards, if you don't know. So sometimes if we're going to pretend this is a keyboard, you press one note, and then you press another and it plays both at the same time. So it makes a harmony, right? So let's say you're playing C and D at the same time. If you're trying to play a C chord, it makes a nice sound where it's both of them together. There's some keyboard settings where when you hit another note, it immediately drags the sound up there. So it'd go da. So she does all these solos where it's that one note where you can't play two notes simultaneously, which has a great aggression to it. Has this great sort of, schizophrenic sound. These kinds of solos are all over the place. And then, hey, I was talking to you about Neil Young. How about we talk about someone from my generation? We get to this next part with I guess Gabby Start is the singing, who says, "Man, he wiggles when he walks," which is a direct reference to Pavement. Pigs, they wiggle when they walk. If you don't have this album, it's one of the more underrated Pavement albums. If you don't know Pavement, it's a great slacker rock band, very inspired by Neil Young, who existed in the 90s. And if you listen to this album, okay, Brighten the Corners by Pavement and Greendale by Neil Young, you will understand the 90s, even though that came out in 2003. You will understand the 90s and the 90s aesthetic better than if you sit there listening to Nevermind or Soundgarden. Like, there's just something so awesome about these things. Weirdly true, the same friend Dave, who sent that to me, sent me this album because he liked it so much. Accidentally, he bought an autographed version. Autographed to Pam. So, Pam, you sold your autographed copy of Brighten the Corners. But it's great hearing this kind of Generation X anthem because the song is called Stereo. At the very least, listen to the song Stereo. If you can listen to the song Stereo by Pavement and not love it, I hate to tell you, you need to go see a doctor because you got no taste. You just got no taste. I have a doctorate, Dr. Skye. I'm going to tell you. If you don't like the song Stereo by Pavement, you've got no taste. I'm not saying you have to love it. I'm not saying you have to dedicate your life to listening to Pavement. But it is just an amazing song, and it's everything that they do. And this is a nice quote of that, and it helps me, this whole kind of sense, because it helped me in listening to all this radical, future, poppy, this, that, just kind of connecting to the fact that we're all, so many creators right now, especially creators who were fortunate enough by birth to be born into the American suburbs or the American exurbs or the Canadian suburbs or any kind of material comfort and spiritual desolation that we all live in, that there's a kind of continuity that I think goes from Neil Young through Pavement right here to Underscores. And it doesn't matter how kind of hyper poppy all these things that she is, she's just another kind of disaffected American youth, It's all very Beck-like as well, except it doesn't piss me off. Beck always pisses me off, and Beck always feels like he's just being too smirky. So that's another way this is, interestingly, kind of 90s, even though it sounds so right now. It's great. It's great. It continues on with the song Duh, which helps to weaponize the term duh. This really is a very 90s album, because duh... Uh-oh, someone's here. Don't worry, I have a sign on my door that says, "I am here but wicked busy." So no one's going to knock and interrupt me here. So duh is an expression that was used all the time in the 90s and 80s, and I guess now too, but it's a very offensive and mean thing to say that you just hear all the time. People are saying duh. And in this case, it seems as though this is about, according to underscores, it's about Cindy getting diagnosed with a rare disease. I think this is a metaphor for that trans awakening. That's how it feels to me. My condition is benign and as rare as it gets. That kind of sense of sort of, it's a rare thing, but it doesn't actually hurt you. I can't quite tell. Just all these sounds, all these quotes, all these just duh, 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 duh. And I think what it is that often when people realize they have an identity which is not normative, okay, whether that's gay or trans or any other number of non-normed identities, there's like a realization like, well, of course, you know? I mean, of course I am this. Of course I am that, you know? Like, there's a kind of duh to it, which of course is terrible because you should never feel shamed for living in a society that denies your existence and then realizing that you are the thing that is being denied. That's a hard thing to realize. And we just have the good luck all the time here. And there's this great, like, emotional heart, this, like, just loud bridge, and I'm not scared of death, I'm scared of God. And then there's some harmonica. Now that I think about it, she is very Beck-like in the way that she seems to just sort of, like, find instruments and be like, here we go. Hey, I got a banjo. Bang, 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 bang. Hey, I got a harmonica. You know? That's how our harmonica sounds. You don't even know who I am. This is the interesting theme here. According to her, according to underscores, it's about Mara romanticizing Cindy and like essentially being obsessed and trying to be her and breaking into her house and wearing her perfume. I actually did a lesson on perfume in my class today, and I am wearing Chanel No. 5 right now. That's all I can smell. It is not going away. It's a nice smell, classic. But my wife does not like the smell of Chanel No. 5, so she is going to think that her husband came home a very, very, very old Serbian woman. But you know, she like breaks into the house, wears her clothes, tries to be her. It's sort of about stalking. It seems like it's also about the kind of like online relationships. You know, almost like a sequel to Stan by Eminem, sort of parasocial relationships. It seems like it could be a song someone singing about their neighbor, or it could be a song someone singing about Harry Styles. And then there's this loop. There's this loop, and this is the coolest thing. It's a loop that is from Dance Dance Revolution, the video game where you jump around on the floor and hit little buttons. Okay? If you go to the Rochester Museum of Play, the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, they have it for free. You can go there and play. It's awesome. I've often wondered what will be the impact of that video game on people's music, because the music is awesome in Dance Dance Revolution. It's a specific kind of upbeat dance music, and I think we'll hear throughout this album, you can hear the influence of Dance Dance Revolution on the album. But it's just all of these, like, I don't even have it all here, but it's all these quotes of like, everybody has bad days. I believe in you. I believe in what you're going to do. It's all these like affirmations, and it's great because it's so much at odds with what's being said. And it's just between this and the track 2, like these loops are just outstanding. And the great thing is here is that she's bringing in bass. She's bringing in the bass to go along with this background, and she's allowing this totally extravagant series of, I believe in you. You can do it. Good luck. Better luck next time. Everybody has bad days, over and over and over again, but she never turns it off. It's always playing in the background, and then sometimes it comes up louder. And then her voice, her actual singing voice, is just so tremendous. And at times there's like the sound of a telephone, beep, like the sound of it's just great. And it sounds to me like, even though this is quoting Dance Dance Revolution, what I feel like is that the narrator is like calling a phone number, and that phone number just gives you affirmations. And then she's hitting the button for another affirmation. That's how it feels like to me. And the hollowness of these kinds of affirmations, you know, the sense that you get if I tell you, hey, you know, if you're watching this video and you're 40 minutes in, you're probably going to be okay, and you're interested in ideas at higher levels of thought and all that, you know? Like, you want to hear affirmation things here, you know? That was a bad example. Hey, can't win them all. Very sort of specific, and the best day of my life is wearing your clothes. It gets really emotional, and oh yeah, I do have the quotes. It's not the end of the world. There's always tomorrow. You can do it. I'm ready to support your next effort. I'm always here for you. I'm ready to support your next effort is particularly good because that indicates that probably the person who said it is reading something that was translated from another language because it's made by Konami. I'm assuming it's Japanese because it doesn't really roll off the tongue in English. I'm ready to support your next effort. Please subscribe to the channel if you are ready to support my next effort. Then we get to Johnny, Johnny, Johnny. Okay. First of all, it's based on Whoops Johnny, which if you don't know is a game that you play where you tell somebody, okay, follow along, see if you can do exactly what I'm doing. Okay? Johnny, 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 whoops, Johnny, 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 Johnny. And then the person says, I can do that, and they do this. Johnny, 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 whoops, Johnny, 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 Johnny. And you say, no, that's not it. No, I thought I did it right. Okay, follow along. Okay. Johnny, 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 whoops, Johnny, 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 Johnny. And the trick is they have to say okay before they do it. There's some other aspect of it that isn't the Johnny Johnny. It's a great game of misdirection. And she uses that as this cool hook on this song. So you think it's this fun song. Yay, wee, and there's some good luck carries over from the previous song. Yay, it's this funny thing. But it's a terribly depressing song. Great bass, drum and bass groove, real almost like Daft Punk style groove here. Just badass singing, like full drums. But the whole thing is about grooming. It's about sexual predation, and it's from the mind of the groomed. How she needs to feel validated by this person, how she just wanted to feel pretty, and how she got sucked in. And it's too much. It's too much. It's really painful. So it's an upbeat song, but it feels way too real, if that makes sense. Because it explains how one ends up being groomed and the sentiments that are preyed upon. And she even describes how she has how she disassociates in the moment where she is assaulted, and how the groomer is happy that she hadn't been touched yet, and all these really gross things. And it's a terrible, 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 terrible song that is an absolute bop. So I don't know what to do with that. Shoot to kill your darlings. And this is another theme, I guess, is violence. Violence in America, it's a popular theme. This is apparently, according to her, about Old Money Bitch, who's one of the characters who tries to figure out how she feels about losing a close friend. This crazy sound, a crazy loop, drums and guitars and computer beeps and the gun cock, a Casio drum. This basically a dubstep song. And she sings about like not knowing about guns but actually saying that she likes the gun range. Because are you against guns? I'm against guns. I want there to be maximal gun control. Maximal. As in jump into your house, steal your guns, 100%. Totally for it. You ever shot a gun? It's awesome. It is the best. It is so cool. If you never shot a gun, you can be against guns. You can be pro-gun control. But you have to try shooting guns sometime. It is very fun. It's a very fun thing. So she is acknowledging this kind of disconnect that we have to have in our head, you know. But it's sort of about this, and it's about like someone who's in ROTC, ROTC, who's dating a cheerleader, and it's about like war, and it's basically about masculine obsessions with images of violence. It even goes into like class and how most people who fight in wars are of the lower class, and it's talking about guns and violence. And it's this whole kind of pastiche of America. And this is approaching the issue of violence, approaching the issue of guns through this very oblique lens. And it ends beautifully with, I just don't want you to die. These sounds just super loud and bizarre. And then some banjo and just, whew. So that's the first side. Okay, that's basically the first half of the album. We get to side B, opens up with horror movie soundtrack. Again, this is what I'm talking about. Like, we're sort of away from the craziness of the first side. This is where apparently Old Money Bitch feels, according to her, according to underscores, apathy makes life not worth living. Again, we're a little bit in Generation X territory. Okay, we're in Generation X territory of apathy, of whatever. Okay, soda. But it's just a guitar and gentle voice. Then there's some like discordant notes. There's great vulnerability to her voice. Seems to be that she has kind of a suicide note. Send my luck to the girls. I've always had it in spades. You won't get away with this. You won't get away with this. It's as though she's describing her own self, not getting away with the suicide that she's planning. Old Money Bitch is the next song where, unfortunately, she's not taking her life. And we have Mara who's bashing. And this is about like jealousy in America. This is sort of the album's very pop, right? This album could be a top 40 hit just because there's so many catchy things in here. This reminds me most sort of Melanie Martinez, album K through 12, an album which I think is great. So there's no insult to comparing something to Melanie Martinez. But this is great because it's about someone middle class who has a lot of privilege criticizing somebody who's upper class for having more privilege. And it's about that kind of hypocrisy that we have. I grew up and my family had more money than most of my friends, but my friends had more money than most of the people. It was an upper middle class suburb. So I basically was Old Money Bitch for my friends. And it's about that jealousy. And what's interesting is about the way that Old Money Bitch tries to communicate poverty, and this is true. If you know anybody with old money. So on the personal side, my family was from old money. The money dried up. I have to work. I'm not set for life, but I do understand the mentality because my father didn't have to work. And anyways, so he was lucky in that way, as lucky as you can be for someone who was able to never work for his whole life because his father died and he was that old. How old my father was when his father died. So anyways, very complicated. There's no such thing as an easy life. But there is a thing often where people who are from old money try to flex by seeming poor. Because new money wants to show off. Old money doesn't even care. Old money thinks that being rich is about taste and never buying a Mercedes, So that's kind of the idea here. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating take. I don't know what the perspective is of underscores towards this, but I love it because it has this sort of empathy, I think, for all sides of the story. There's a great one of those single note guitar, like solos on the keyboard, the wheel, 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 wheel. And then the outro is like full on Dance Dance Revolution. Hey, there are people who do that, right? There are people who do, I know people do the Guitar Hero thing, right? Where they put songs onto Guitar Hero. Do they do that for Dance Dance Revolution? Can I get this song in Dance Dance Revolution? Next track is Geez Louise, the longest song, super epic song. This is with someone named Hen House. Cindy's friend Jordan unearths people's shared history, altering their stance on religion. This is the least cohesive song. I don't really quite get what's going on here. Very hard, full snare, 4-snare beat, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the snare. It creates a lot of tension when you have a snare going that much. Good luck, it's all over here. It's like kind of like just bitter pop punk guitars and strings, and it becomes like a standard kind of bluesy Rolling Stones jam at a certain point. Great guitar solo, or maybe it's a keyboard solo with that single note as well. You kind of sit with these lyrics. I can't tell if it's like lyrics about, I don't know if there's some kind of like I don't know if the lyrics are about like difficulty of like being trans or maybe even being not white. I think I read somewhere that she underscores is of Filipina origin. Maybe, I'm not sure. I can't quite tell. It seems like there's a lot of these things happening here with like trying to figure identity, and it's very confusing. What I like about it is I think the form is measuring the content. I think the chaos, because it doesn't matter. It does matter if you are coming to terms with sexuality and gender when you're in your early 20s. But even if you're not, when you're in your early 20s, late teens, your life is just complete chaos. You're still trying to figure out who you are. They're different questions, but there's no such thing as an easy early 20s, right? You're just, who the hell am I? What am I doing? Why am I watching some old guy talking about this album for 50 minutes? You have all these questions. And this feels like this song's length and sections feel like that. It ends with the words womanoid, which seems like it's sort of commenting on a lot of the far right's talking points about women and about trans people. And then it just ends with this like crazy scream and just saying over and over again, we don't have to talk about it. We don't have to talk about it. And I think that is the thesis. I think the thesis of the whole album is that Wallsocket, like America, is a town that is saying we don't have to talk about it. What is it? It is anything that is not me. Anything that is not straight, white, cis, het, male. Anything that is not that, we don't have to talk about it. I'm not lying to you when I'm telling you the right wing is running for office in my hometown. And they say the name of the town. And on all of their slogans, to be elected for office, and I'll use the term Wallsocket, I'll say I live in Wallsocket, it says Wallsocket before politics. Implying that voting for them is voting against politics, saying that they are politicians who are not politics. What that means is politics is anything complex, anything that complicates the status quo, that creates any sense of alterity. Alterity meaning otherness. Glaven alterity. Anything that is not cis, het, straight, white, male, or maybe female, but cis, het, straight, white, right? Anything that is not that is politics. And what they want is let's just not talk about it. Because that's how it was when I was growing up. We didn't have to talk about it. We didn't talk about slavery. We didn't talk about trans rights. We didn't talk about gay rights. Because they weren't there. Hey, we're before politics. Little pedal steel, little banjo in there. 77 dog years. This is Mara talking to Cinny, and this is great because this is the most kind of narrative follow-through we have here. We have these great cool high and low alien sounds, guitar, acoustic guitar, and this hard drum machine. This like, if you played this with different instrumentation, it could be just a totally normal song, but you have all these gun cocking sounds. The guitar lines remind me, and this is going to sound like an insult, of Eric Clapton. I once got in, I was this close to getting into a bar fight once about Eric Clapton. I was against Eric Clapton. Someone was saying that he was great. I was going through a divorce. It was a tough time. Don't get in bar fights about weird old racist, overhyped guitar players. But still, he does write some great guitar lines. This feels kind of like an Eric Clapton guitar. And this is what I'm saying, like, she has a lot of skill. She's not just good at making cool sounding music for Zoomers, like she is very talented, and that's very clear here. And what I love here is that this is about the consequences of the white collar crime. This is about Cinny paying for her father's sins, and about the life that Cinny's father got to live, and that Cinny lost her father, who ran away to avoid this being caught, and the void that's left. And I would say you could expand this out to America in general and say that this is about how in America we prioritize money and success over familial connections and support and love. And it's beautiful because she is like a dog, and she's talking about 77 dog years, which is in English, which is in human years, 11 years old, I believe. I think a lot of this album is about 11. It's about being 11. I get the sense that 11 was when she was sexually abused, or at the very least was when the groomer started. That's very clear according to the song Johnny Johnny. Also, it seems as though her awakening of being trans was when she was 11, and also 11 was when, or 11 years is how long the father's been gone. And it's about the emptiness that's left behind. The guitar gets almost grungy at a certain point, and a great pedal steel and piano. She just has so much taste and compositional mastery all the way throughout. It's great. 5 bags of popcorn. Uncanny Long Arms with Jane Remover. I like Jane Remover. I haven't reviewed any of her stuff, but I've listened to it, and so maybe I'll review it next time. This is about Mara, and this is that kind of body horror adjacent stuff where she realizes her arms are longer than usual. I don't quite get the metaphor. You can tell me in the comments if you do. Very warbled guitar. All he's talking about dreams, and it's kind of like I can't touch my toes. What's happening to me? It feels like it's that trans awakening question, you know, of feeling your body differently. I don't quite know, but then it's also. This song I don't quite understand how it fits in. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying I don't get it. We get to the last track, Good Luck, Final Girl. It's nice because the opening song on side B, it does feel like side A and side B are very deliberate differences, right? Side A is the thing that's a little bit more developed, and side B is a little bit less developed, still very well produced. It starts off with horror movie song and then ends with Good Luck Final Girl. Final Girl is the Jamie Lee Curtis character in any horror movie, any slasher movie, where the killer kills everybody except for the final girl who exists. And of course, we don't know which of the three girls is the final girl, because I think, come on, it's all Cindy, right? There's only one final girl, right? I mean, theoretically, the way I read this is that these are three different parts of Underscore's conception of herself. That's the way it seems to me. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm oversimplifying. Folk guitar and weird voices and basses come in, and there's this cool like degenerating electronic voice at the end, and it's just a beautiful ending. It's kind of a softer ending to an album which is often quite harsh and hard. There was one thing I forgot to mention. There was some awesome... What song was that? Oh, yeah, it was Duh. There's this thing where the hi-hat, it's just simple, tss, tss, tss. Oh, look, I lost a button. A hi-hat. Tss, 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 tss. But there's a dissolution of the sound. It like falls apart digitally. It's like... Whatever Underscores is doing, we need to be paying more attention. I don't know if this album is is Pitchfork talking about it? Did this get a yellow flannel on Fantano? I don't know. I don't know how big this album is. It feels like it should be bigger. I am very happy. I thank you. Your gift to me was to listen to Underscores. My gift to you, listen to Greendale and brighten the corners. And we'll just keep this thing going. Support art, support artists. Trans rights are human rights. The wealth gap is a problem. The horseshoe theory is basically bullshit. Time for my sponsorship. Don't gamble. Never gamble. All right, I'm done preaching. Until next time, there's the camera.